At times, a mere glimmer in the depths of despair can uncover the truths we've overlooked throughout our existence. For Thomas Whitaker, that illumination seeped from beneath his kitchen door at 2:16 a.m. The Whitaker estate loomed quietly that night, flawless in its elegance, unwavering in its balance. Concealed by ornate iron gates and enveloped in meticulously trimmed hedges, the estate on Halcyon Hill transcended the notion of a mere residence. It stood as a stronghold of routine, a monument to unaddressed sorrow, a testament to years devoted to refining what had long since lost its luster. Within, the marble floors shimmered as if reflecting a tranquil lake. A magnificent chandelier dangled from the lofty ceiling, sparkling brilliantly despite the lack of visitors. Music occasionally drifted through the intercom, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, yet it felt more like a recollection than a beckoning. And Thomas, the master of it all, glided through his dominion like a specter in Kashmir. At 61, he was a man whose name had once commanded the attention of markets and whose presence had the power to silence boardrooms. Yet this evening, he found himself merely in need of a drink. The familiar restlessness that crept in after midnight had returned, as it often did, and he found himself quietly making his way barefoot down the spiral staircase toward the kitchen. In that moment he caught sight of it, the light. A slender beam of golden light poured onto the hallway floor from beneath the kitchen door. That in itself was peculiar. The personnel were instructed to vanish after 10 p.m. He compensated them generously to remain unseen. The estate operated with impeccable precision, a flawless orchestration of every detail. At this hour, the world should have been wrapped in slumber, unless, of course, something had gone awry. Thomas, still draped in his robe, ambled along, exuding a sense of ease rather than weariness. He had no faith in fear. With the weighed silence of one who had spent too many years in an overly still home, he opened the door, anticipating perhaps a malfunctioning fridge light. Or maybe it was Olivia, the new sous chef, who once again neglected to turn off the stove. Yet it was not Olivia. Lena Morales was the one who tended to the house, and she wasn't preparing meals or tidying up. She remained completely oblivious to his presence. She was immersed in her studies. She perched at the grand marble island, enveloped in a gray sweater draped over her navy uniform, her elbows propped on a pile of well-worn textbooks. Her hair, typically secured in a tight style throughout the day, now cascaded freely down her back. A pencil rested neatly behind her ear. Her lips formed the words softly as she traced the lines on the page before her. Thomas lingered in the doorway, frozen in place. On the counter before her lay books that were far too sophisticated for someone in her position. Human biology, body systems, an introduction to organic chemistry, and a meticulously crafted hand-drawn diagram of a kidney, elegantly labeled in blue and black ink. Lena Morales was pursuing her studies in the field of medicine. He cleared his throat, a subtle reminder that she was not alone in this moment. She jumped, almost toppling a ceramic mug. Her eyes widened, dark and luminous, a moment of revelation since she had stepped into his household 3 years prior. She gazed at him, truly gazed. "Apologies, sir," she faltered, standing abruptly as the stool scraped loudly across the tile. "I never intended to stay here this late." "I thought you were fine," Thomas said quietly, raising a hand. "I was merely on my way to fetch some water." She reached out to collect her books. "I'll take care of this immediately." "There's no need for that." He moved closer, pouring himself a drink from the dispenser. His gaze fell upon the pages of the open book. "What project are you currently focused on?" Her hands halted in the midst of the page. She cast her gaze downward, a hint of embarrassment flickering across her features. "Entrance exams," she murmured gently, "for an online pre-med program. At this time, after work, I dedicate my time to studying, as daytime classes are beyond my budget. Should I succeed in this exam, there's a possibility I could be eligible for a scholarship." He observed the signs of use on the books, the creased pages, the vibrant ink, the calluses on her fingers that spoke of more than mere tasks. "Are you interested in pursuing a career in nursing?" She raised her chin. "A physician?" He remained silent, as there was no need for a reply. In her gaze, he discovered a spark he hadn't encountered in ages, a sense of direction. In silence, he gave a nod, placed his glass down and turned to leave. Yet he found no rest that night. Instead, Thomas Whitaker lingered at his window, observing the moonlight cascade over the garden paths. A feeling awakened within him, elusive and unnamed. The following morning, he inquired of Alfred, his house manager, about the duration of Ms. Morales's employment here. 3 years and 2 months, Alfred answered without hesitation. Everything is smooth, calm, dependable, and she transfers the majority of her income back to her family in Texas. On that night, and the one that followed, Thomas found himself drawn to the staircase once more at 2:15 a.m., not from thirst, but from a yearning that ran much deeper. Every time he noticed the glow under the door, the hushed murmurs of language, the delicate scratch of a pencil against paper, he refrained from opening the door once more, yet he remained attentive. After an extended period, the house seemed to pause, as if it were holding its breath. For days later, he caught her words in passing. She spoke into the phone, her voice soft yet quivering with emotion. "No, Mama, I haven't shared it with them. Not until I succeed. I understand. I'm making an effort. I'm feeling exhausted. Yet I'm persevering." He turned and left before she could catch a glimpse of him, yet her words remained embedded in his heart. That evening, he settled in and composed an email to his attorney. Request for an anonymous framework regarding the scholarship fund. He named it the Grace Fund, in honor of his late wife, who often remarked that some of the brightest minds may never shine, not due to a lack of talent, but because they were born in rooms without windows. The fund provided comprehensive coverage for tuition, textbooks, lab materials, and a reasonable monthly stipend. No discernible link, merely a glow illuminating her way. When the letter of acceptance arrived, he overlooked it, yet he couldn't ignore the impact it had on her. Lena became silent, retreating into herself. She glided through the house like a whisper, her eyes dimmed in the corridor. Her smile, as petite as it had always been, disappeared completely. It was one evening when she rapped gently on the study door. She had never rapped on the door prior to this moment. "I need to speak with you, Mr. Whitaker," she said, clutching a manila envelope. He welcomed her in. She sat upright, her fingers clutching the envelope as if it contained her entire existence. "Text, I was accepted," she whispered. "Into the program." He smiled. "How delightful. A scholarship is available, covering full tuition and providing monthly support, though it remains unnamed." "I understand. Was it you?" He had the option to deceive, yet he chose honesty. Indeed, he expressed his gratitude sincerely, yet he felt unable to accept it. "What is the reason?" "My family," she expressed, "depends on my earnings. My sister's condition, my brother's education. If I were to cease working, even just part-time, they would lose it all." Thomas, a master of negotiating billion-dollar deals, found himself feeling utterly powerless for the first time in years. He asked if you believe that pursuing your dream is an act of selfishness. Survival seems to overshadow any space for aspirations. He stood there, moving back and forth. "Lena, you've devoted your existence to a world that has never reciprocated your generosity. If you let this opportunity slip away, you may continue to exist, but you will never truly experience life." Her eyes sparkled with unspoken thoughts, yet her lips remained sealed. "I'm not suggesting you leave them behind. Perhaps it's time for another to share the burden." She set the envelope down between them. "No one has ever expressed that to me before." Under the cover of darkness, she meticulously gathered her belongings. Her uniforms, her textbooks, a cherished photo of her family. She murmured softly to the breeze, "I won't abandon you. This is all for you." As the first light of dawn approached, she quietly slipped away. Silence enveloped the house, with the only movement coming from Thomas. He observed from the window as the girl who once meticulously folded his shirts and pressed his linens stepped out of his life, moving toward a future she had crafted on her own terms. And even as the house stood still, Thomas understood one undeniable truth. Everything had changed forever. On the day Lena stepped into the university housing, the rain fell steadily. Not the soft, gentle kind of rain that caressed the windows, but the unyielding kind. The type that drenched your footwear before you even took your initial stride. She lingered outside the brick dormitory, her bag held close, the jacket wrapped snugly around her arms, and the folder containing her acceptance letter gripped like a protective barrier against the world. She went unnoticed by all. No one has ever done that. Within the confines of the room, it was even more cramped than she had envisioned. A solitary bed, a desk, and a shelf just large enough for her collection of books. The light hummed above, caught in a state of uncertainty, wavering between flickering and fading away. Yet she smiled regardless, for it belonged to her. Silence enveloped the surroundings. For the first time, the silence was entirely my own. That evening, she positioned herself by the window, observing as the city lights melded into the haze. The letter, worn and marked by time, lay gently on her lap. She perused it once more, even though the words were etched in her memory. With a gentle flick of her wrist, she opened her notebook and started to pen her thoughts. Dear Mr. Whitaker, I trust this message reaches you in good spirits. I hesitated to put pen to paper, yet there was an undeniable urge within me to express that I have arrived safely, that I am present. The program is more demanding than I anticipated. I feel as though I'm attempting to race in a language I've only recently begun to navigate. Yet I continue to move, to breathe, to strive. This is the smallest place I've ever called home. My room is cramped, just enough space for the bed and desk. As I settle by the window each morning, coffee in hand and books surrounding me, a sense of wealth envelopes me. Not in currency, but in the fulfillment of purpose. I appreciate this opportunity you've provided me. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I can't think of anything more to add, other than that I won't squander it. L. She carefully folded the letter, tucked it into an envelope, and sent it off the following morning before her first class. She was not anticipating a response. She had her doubts about whether he would actually read it, yet it felt like the right thing to do. 2 days later, the letter arrived for Thomas. He identified the handwriting instantly when Alfred presented it in his study. He opened it with great caution, as if it were fragile and could disintegrate at any moment. Upon completing the reading, he carefully set it in the top drawer of his desk, laid flat and unfolded, as though to maintain the significance of each word. There was no reply from him. He was unable to. It had ceased to be his narrative. That evening, he lingered by the roses on the west wall longer than he typically would, the very ones she had casually referenced once. They were fading now, kissed by frost. Still, a few managed to bloom. In that stillness, enveloped by darkness and fragrance, he grasped a truth that had eluded him until now. She had not merely departed. She carried a fragment of the house with her, a fragment that was now impossible to ignore. Lena's first semester felt like a battleground, filled with an onslaught of syllabi, complex scientific terms, and sheer fatigue. Her peers were younger, primarily recent graduates from private high schools. Their backpacks were in perfect harmony. Their laptops shimmered with an array of stickers from tech companies and internship experiences. They posed questions in class as if they were already aware of the answers. She did not. She attentively absorbed everything, meticulously recorded details, made sure to be there ahead of time, and lingered long after the others had left. In the evenings, she offered her tutoring services to earn some extra income, primarily focusing on biology and chemistry. She guided a young boy named Malik through the concept of cellular respiration by weaving a narrative that compared car engines to trees. He successfully completed his midterm. He wept upon seeing the grade. He was not alone in this. Every week, she forwarded funds back home, just sufficient to take care of Mari's epilepsy medication and Jules' educational expenses. She extended the remainder. The groceries consisted of ramen and frozen spinach. By the third month, her shoes were riddled with holes. Her coat always seemed to resist being zipped all the way up. Yet, she remained silent. This was her choice. And when she felt the weight of her pain, when the nights grew unbearably long, She poured her heart onto the page. The second letter was more concise. I took my first anatomy quiz. I didn't fail, and while I didn't achieve a perfect score, I can say I managed to pass. That holds greater significance than I initially realized. Discovered a library that keeps its doors open into the evening. The woman at the desk has become familiar with me now. She hands me the remnants of tea from the break room. Little acts of kindness soften the edges of our world. I wonder if the roses continue to flourish on the west wall. I've always had a fondness for those. Lena Thomas perused it at his desk, the afternoon light spilling in and creating long, golden streaks throughout the room. He offered a hint of a smile, but it never quite reached his eyes. Yet there was a gentle warmth in his gaze. He affixed it above the initial letter. As he approached the west wall later that day, he came to a halt, gazed at the final two blossoms holding on to their stems. One vibrant red, one soft pale pink, bold and unyielding, much like her spirit. The third letter arrived accompanied by a photograph. Lena, alongside three fellow students clad in scrubs, beams shyly in front of a weathered science building. The image lacked clarity. The quality of the print was lacking, yet it radiated with an essence more striking than mere hue. On the reverse side, study group. Today, I guided them through the process of diagramming a heart. One of them remarked that I clarify concepts more effectively than our instructor. Later, I found myself in the bathroom, tears streaming down my face, not out of sadness, but simply because it resonated with authenticity. This could truly come to fruition. Thanks a lot. Lena Thomas gazed at the photo for what felt like an eternity. For the first time in years, he finally spoke the words aloud. To a vacant space that at last seemed to embrace a sense of fullness. You will succeed. Lena found herself uncertain of her place in his life at that moment. Neither an employee nor quite a friend. Something different, something more subdued, yet profoundly authentic. She was taken by surprise when he didn't respond, and he remained silent. Yet, she continued to write regardless. For within that grand mansion, beyond the gleaming oak doors and the chilling chandeliers, lingered a man who had perceived her essence even when she was shrouded in invisibility. And she would carry that memory with her always. As her second semester commenced, Lena had found her groove. Focused, intentional, and relentless. Each morning, she awakened before the sun graced the sky. A cup of coffee, flashcards in hand, a brief moment of prayer nestled between breaths. She had a quote from a textbook affixed to her mirror. You are not lagging. You are crafting from a more profound foundation. Indeed, it was true. While her classmates strolled along smooth paths, Lena found herself navigating the sharp edges of brambles with bare feet, transporting not merely literature, but cherished moments. Of her mother meticulously folding laundry beneath the whirring of broken ceiling fans. Of evenings when hunger settled in as a silent companion. On some mornings, she chose to forego school to remain at home with Mari during the times when the seizures intensified. In these university corridors filled with assurance and privilege, she moved with a distinct grace. Not with hubris, but with a sense of rightful intention. Nevertheless, it proved to be quite challenging. There were days when she felt like giving up. Moments when her hands trembled so intensely in the lab that grasping the scalpel felt nearly impossible. Moments when a professor seemed to see beyond her, rather than truly noticing her. Moments when her students failed to arrive for tutoring and the funds for groceries dwindled. Yet the letters would arrive. Not from Thomas. He still hasn't replied, but from home. Mari's most recent creation features a whimsical sunflower, slightly askew, with the name Drelina scrawled in crayon below it. A brief message from her mother. The medication has been delivered. May divine favor shine upon the one who delivered it. Continue on, my dear. Lena affixed those to the interior of her closet door. In a distant part of the country, within the serene confines of an ancient mansion study, Thomas embarked on a ritual uniquely his own. Every morning, he would settle down with his coffee, dark and unsweetened, and immerse himself in one of her letters, occasionally reading it twice. He never voiced how significant they were to him, yet he had started to create room for them, both in a physical sense and beyond. The corkboard in his study now displayed more than a dozen pages. Creased, worn, yet brimming with vitality. Below them rested a delicate glass dish brimming with scattered petals from the roses Lena had once spoken of. He was uncertain about the reason for holding on to them, yet he found himself unable to part with them. On a brisk Thursday afternoon, a fresh envelope made its entrance. Within lay a certificate, a testament to outstanding achievement in advanced pathophysiology. Lena Morales, her name elegantly displayed in bold serif at the top. No communication this time, merely the accolade, accompanied by a brief note jotted in the margin. I nearly hesitated to step forward and accept this. The professor uttered my name on 2 occasions. I continue to sense that I'm intruding upon another's destiny, yet I proceeded regardless. Thomas carefully framed it and hung it right next to her first letter. Later that night, as Alfred walked by the study and lingered at the door, he beheld the wall transformed. No longer just a barrier but a narrative emerging in scattered pieces, and a quiet smile graced his lips. He never inquired. It was unnecessary. One evening, Lena lingered after her hospital rotation. The day had stretched on for a grueling 12 hours, spent in the company of ER nurses. She had supported someone through the pain of a miscarriage, tended to a wound so severe it brought her to her knees, and acted as a translator for a Spanish-speaking father whose son was struggling to breathe after breaking 3 ribs. Yet, she lingered on, meticulously wiping down the counters, restocking the gloves, and assisting a janitor she hardly knew in hauling trash bags to the dumpster. "You're not compensated for that," one of the residents remarked, observing her from behind a clipboard. Lena regarded her with a serene expression. "I also didn't receive any compensation to arrive at this point." At the stroke of midnight, she exited the hospital, her shoes drenched from the slushy snow, and made her way through the 9 blocks to her apartment. Her hands bore the marks of toil, her eyes weighed down with fatigue, her spirit wavering on the brink of uncertainty. As she approached her mailbox, anticipation bubbled within her. And there it was, a small brown envelope, patiently waiting for her discovery. No return address was provided. Inside lay a prepaid card, accompanied by a typed note that read, "For new shoes and warm meals, for the work that often goes unnoticed." She had no reason to question its origin. She perched on the edge of her bed, tears flowing silently, a testament to her weariness. Not from sorrow, but from the profound beauty of being acknowledged. Back at the estate, Thomas started to transform in ways so subtle that even he hardly recognized the changes at first. He contributed less during discussions, yet absorbed more of what was being said. He ceased to point out the florist's asymmetrical arrangements, began inquiring about the gardeners' names, and made discreet donations to a free clinic in Eastwood, Lena's former neighborhood. No recognition, no accolades, just a steady supply each month. He started guiding at a community youth business incubator, addressing students whose neighborhoods had consistently barred them from aspirations of the boardroom. When a student inquired, "What brings you here, sir?" he stated plainly, "As someone once provided me with a reason to have faith in second chances." Though he never uttered her name, it remained with him, guiding him like a steadfast compass. By the midpoint of her 3rd year, Lena had established her confidence. She still questioned her abilities frequently, yet the fear no longer shaped her identity. She garnered the admiration of her professors, took charge of study groups, and assisted 3 students from underrepresented backgrounds in their medical school applications. Her tutoring hours now supported not only Marie's medication but also her therapy. She had even purchased new shoes, the type that remained comfortable after a long day on her feet. Suddenly, an unforeseen event unfolded. She was included in a new mentorship initiative, designed for 3rd-year students to assist international enrollees in adapting to the program. She did not submit an application. She had received a nomination from someone. As she stepped into the orientation room, a moment of uncertainty washed over her. As she started to discuss the art of organizing notes, the delicate dance of balancing sleep with the demands of life, and the resilience needed to persevere when feeling overlooked, the atmosphere shifted. and the audience became captivated. Later, a girl from Nepal took her aside. "You give me a sense of belonging," she expressed. That evening, Lena crafted a fresh letter. "They're allowing me to contribute now, truly contribute, not merely observe or endure. I never believed I had anything valuable to share, yet perhaps the experiences I've held can serve as a guide for another." Lena Thomas read that line 3 times, then gazed out the window for an extended moment, the letter still warm in her hand. Beyond the confines of the estate, the ivy clinging to the walls had transformed into a rich shade of crimson. The season had turned, yet the cold lingered on. Even the roses ceased to bloom. Yet, the house seemed to pulse with a vibrant energy. After a long stretch of time, it finally radiated with vitality. Lena entered the intimate lecture hall right before the concluding presentation, taking a brief moment to linger at the entrance. The sunlight streamed through the towering glass windows, illuminating particles of dust that twirled in the air like fleeting ideas. Her hands clutched a folder filled with patient notes, a blend of reality and simulation. The presentation stood as her final challenge before embarking on clinical rotations. She had hardly closed her eyes the previous night. The night nurse at the assisted living facility, where she took on weekend shifts, had called in sick. Lena had committed to the double shift, spending 12 hours on her feet, and then diving straight into preparation for her exam. For nearly 3 years, she had been navigating this existence, but today was unlike any other. Today, she was truly living. Today, she was demonstrating. She strolled deliberately to the front of the room, her gaze drawn to a well-known quote inscribed on a plaque beside the podium. "In the stillness, we unveil the essence of our being." The irony brought a smile to her face. She commenced her presentation with a sense of calm and assurance. A pediatric patient presents with recurring infections and inadequate growth. Her classmates nervously twirled their pens and shuffled through their notes. Yet Lena never cast her eyes downward. Her tone was steady, her expertise acquired. As she arrived at the last slide and took a breath, a hush fell over the room. Then came the applause. Not merely the courteous academic variety, but genuine, prolonged applause. Her professor gave a deliberate nod. "Ms. Morales, you are destined to become an outstanding doctor." She lowered her gaze, overwhelmed and silent. Yet within her chest, a release occurred, a hold that had kept her heart captive for years. That evening, she settled into her apartment, cradling a cup of chamomile tea as a gentle breeze wafted through the open window. Her phone vibrated, signaling an email from the university. She had received a clinical rotation at St. Vincent's Community Hospital in Queens, which was her top choice. She shut her eyes and allowed the tears to flow. Calm and measured, not out of fear, but from the realization that she has finally arrived at the threshold of a dream she once struggled to articulate. She composed another letter. "Mr. Whitaker, they remarked that my hands are akin to those of a surgeon, steady and focused. I never imagined I would receive such a compliment in my lifetime. Next month, I will start my rotation in Queens. It's a modest community hospital, lacking in extravagance, yet it serves those who often go unnoticed elsewhere. Feels right. I've started to observe something intriguing. I no longer feel as though I'm putting on a facade. I remain unfazed when someone refers to me as a doctor in training. I stand tall when I express myself. I enter spaces with a sense of ownership. I believe I am starting to embody her essence, the figure I envisioned as a child, grasping my father's hand as he moved on. Thank you for allowing her to be." L. Thomas received the letter on a blustery Tuesday. He absorbed the words by the window, the wind caressing the glass as if it were a gentle sigh. The final line clung to him, refusing to be forgotten. He settled into his chair and slid open the drawer that housed her letters, now arranged in a tidy, dog-eared order. He recalled Marjorie, his late wife, who often remarked that the most profound creations we forge are intangible. They reside within people. And he came to understand that he had contributed to the creation of something remarkable, not through wealth but through faith. Weeks later, Lena entered the familiar, time-worn lobby of St. Vincent's. The structure bore the weight of time, Its elevator groaned with age. The anticipation lingered. The chairs may not have been a perfect match, yet the space pulsed with life. Individuals filled the corridor, single mothers accompanied by their young children, elderly pairs clutching plastic bags filled with medication, and teenagers nursing injuries they preferred to keep to themselves. Lena approached the intake desk, introduced herself, and was guided to her supervisor, a gentle yet perceptive doctor named Josiah Henry. He cast a fleeting look at her coat, her ID badge, and finally her eyes. "You seem a bit anxious," he remarked. She confessed. "I am." "Excellent," he remarked. "It signifies that you have a genuine concern." From that day onward, she toiled through 12-hour shifts, occasionally stretching to 14. She explored pediatrics, internal medicine, and urgent care. She provided translation services for patients who communicated in Spanish. She grasped hands, checked vitals, and assisted a mother in delivering a baby when the on-call OB found themselves delayed in traffic. She lingered into the evening, arrived before dawn. Dr. Henry began addressing her as Dr. Morales in the absence of the residents. On a fateful night, a small boy entered, no more than 6 years old. His lips tinged with blue, while his mother wept inconsolably. The emergency room was lacking sufficient personnel. The physician was in the operating room. The nurses were overwhelmed. Lena acted without a moment's pause. She evaluated the situation, acted swiftly, administered oxygen, monitored vital signs, and requested a chest X-ray. When Dr. Henry finally arrived, she had successfully stabilized the boy's airway. He gazed at her and inquired, "How did you figure out what to do?" She paused before responding. Then she remarked, "For someone had once placed their faith in my potential." Later that night, as she stepped into the biting cold, her fingers felt like ice, yet her spirit burned bright. She perched on the bench near the bus stop, observing the distant flicker of the traffic lights. She retrieved her notebook. He struggled for breath, yet I remained composed and steady. I caught a glimpse of him. I have relocated. I provided assistance. I focused on the journey, not the accolades or setbacks. I have finally embraced my true self. L. The page was sent off in the morning light. Thomas remained composed as he read that passage, yet he chose to take a lengthy stroll afterward, wandering through the garden, past the vacant west wing, and into the music room that his wife once graced with her piano melodies. Upon his return to the study, he affixed the letter squarely in the middle of the board. He lingered in silence, his gaze fixed upon it for what felt like an eternity. In those words, he found himself gasping for air, while I thrived. He perceived not merely a triumph, but a heritage not his own, but hers. Time flew by at St. Vincent's. Lena glided through the corridors with a subtle grace, never seeking the spotlight, yet undeniably captivating once her creations came into view. She emerged as the go-to person for nurses whenever a chart was perplexing. The medical assistants exchanged hushed words when a patient's account contradicted the nature of their injury. The individual who remained to tidy up after a challenging code, despite her shift having concluded hours earlier, she continued to don the same coat, still relied on the same pencil case from her first year. She continued to call her mother every Sunday night, if only to listen to her voice. Yet, a change had stirred within her. She had ceased to doubt her place in the world. She was aware that she did. On a Friday afternoon, as the sun sank behind the city skyline, Lena positioned herself by the window of the pediatric wing, observing a young girl as she painted with watercolors on a tray. A girl was admitted due to chronic asthma. Lena had spent 3 consecutive nights by her side, the familiar sound of wheezing returning, as she softly hummed the lullabies of her childhood. A nurse leaned in and said, "She claims you're her favorite doctor." Lena beamed with delight. "I haven't become a doctor just yet." She shows no concern. That evening, Lena arrived back at her small apartment to discover a letter awaiting her. Not from her family, not from the university, but from the very board of the university. She received a nomination for a Community Leadership Fellowship, a year-long funded opportunity aimed at establishing a public health clinic in underserved neighborhoods. She gazed at the letter, lost in thought for what felt like an eternity. Then she wept, not from being overwhelmed, but because, for the first time, someone had invited her to take the helm. She delayed in reaching out to Thomas. She desired to hold off until she could articulate her thoughts with clarity, not out of surprise, but from a place of conviction. After a fortnight, she sent off the letter. Mr. Whitaker, I've received an unexpected offer, an opportunity to design and establish a small clinic in Queens. 5 rooms, a solitary waiting bench, and a pharmacy. I'm unsure about how to approach this. I have yet to create anything beyond my own faith in this vision. Yet, I will make an effort as I believe this is my rightful place at this moment. Not merely alleviating symptoms, but confronting the quiet. The type of quiet that almost consumed me before I was ever acknowledged. The clinic will be called Humana. It signifies humanity, for the hands that embrace, for those who mend, for the narratives unheard until they find an audience. I appreciate your willingness to listen initially. Lena Thomas perused that letter with deliberate slowness, savoring each word, then revisited it once more. He remained still for an extended period afterward. The room enveloped him in a quiet stillness, the air thick with an unspoken weight, not suffocating, merely abundant. He folded the letter, then reopened it, not to revisit the words, but to savor the sensation. In that letter, he perceived the complete journey of a life. The journey of a girl who once murmured medical terms in the shadows, now articulating with the confidence of one who has truly arrived. The clinic was established after a lengthy 9-month process. 9 months filled with permits, inspections, failed wiring, cracked tiles, missing paperwork, and budget cuts. 9 months of Lena balancing aspirations in one hand and a stethoscope in the other. 9 months spent engaging with suppliers who dismissed her until she demonstrated the numbers before them, of conversing with donors who inquired about her age, all while maintaining a smile throughout the experience. She brought on board 2 nurses from the local area, a part-time receptionist who was pursuing a degree in social work, and a retired physician who dedicated his time twice a week. He referred to her as his boss, a title she never quite acclimated to. On the day of the opening, there were no grand ceremonies, no press coverage, just a mother tending to her 2 coughing children, a grandfather struggling with knee pain, and a young woman hesitant to seek help for a deep cut on her arm. Lena welcomed each individual with the same serene demeanor she had once displayed amidst marble floors and silver vases. She didn't inquire about coverage. Instead, she asked, "Where does it hurt?" That evening, once the clinic had shut its doors, she found herself seated on the bench outside, beneath a vibrant mural created by the hands of local children. Fingerprints transformed into leaves on a tree, each adorned with a name painted in vibrant strokes. She leaned her head back and exhaled deeply, a sense of accomplishment washing over her. Then came the footsteps, measured and calm, neither rushed nor uncertain. As she blinked awake, Thomas was there, right in front of her. He appeared more aged, leaner, yet there was an undeniable sense of buoyancy about him. She remained still, while he settled next to her, silence enveloping them, at least for the moment. The city throbbed with life, a symphony of traffic, music, and distant laughter. Yet on that bench, time paused. He mentioned he was close by, and she responded with a smile. "I thought about it, but I didn't want to go in." "It's yours as well," she said, regardless of your acknowledgement. He cast his gaze upon the mural. "This place is indeed enchanting, and they are absolutely right." He gazed at her then, really gazed. "Does it align with your vision?" "No," she whispered. "It's for the best." He extended his hand with careful intention and grasped hers. The atmosphere was warm and steady, devoid of grand speeches or declarations, simply a matter of being present. In that familiar manner, he found himself once again in the hallway, absorbing the sounds around him. Just as she had previously immersed herself in her work beneath a wavering glow, convinced that she remained unnoticed. Now they sat side by side, not as giver and receiver, but as individuals who had influenced each other in quietude. He departed quickly. As he stood to depart, She made no effort to hold him back. Yet, just before he pivoted, he cast a glance over his shoulder. Maintain the illumination, he instructed. She gave a slight nod.
Inconsistently do.
Upon returning to the estate, Thomas entered his study and gazed at the wall adorned with letters. Countless notes, sketches, a photocopied certificate, and a blurry photo from Lena's inaugural anatomy class. A heartfelt note of gratitude from the parent of a young patient, shared by Lena with a simple line. This is why we persevere. He grazed the edges of each page, his fingers moving more slowly, more gently. The space no longer resembled his workspace. It resonated as a legacy, not quantified by financial gain, but by intrinsic value. The value of witnessing another and expressing, I have faith in your potential. Lena continued to put pen to paper, undeterred by the clinic's expansion, the doubling of the staff, or the overflowing waiting room that left her with little time for lunch. She continued to put pen to paper, not on a weekly basis, nor even monthly, but always at the moments that truly counted. A new patient embraced her after receiving care they had never anticipated. A young volunteer expressed her admiration, saying, I aspire to be just like you. When she received the invitation to address a citywide panel on healthcare equity, she meticulously crafted her thoughts, consistently concluding with the same poignant message. I remember the journey that led me to this point, yet I am now clear about my destination. Thomas passed away peacefully 3 years later, in his sleep, without suffering, without fanfare. His will contained a singular personal request, that the board of the Grace Fund persist under its current name, remaining anonymous, and allocate future scholarships to students akin to Lena Morales. At the funeral, attendance was sparse, yet a woman appeared late, clad in a white coat, sporting a name tag, with a stethoscope draped around her neck. She remained at the back, holding back tears. She softly uttered 2 words into the sacred space, gratitude, then turned and stepped back into a realm still yearning for illumination.